there's a lot of posts under hashtag curly boy problems.
Let's take a look here. I'm on Twitter already to get this show posted out there. So let's say hashtag. So here's the question: do you do
Mm-hmm.
hashtag CURLYBOI? Are we curly boy?
Ooh, yeah. I
Curly
try to
boy
stay away from
probs?
DOI. Given,
There's nothing
yeah.
for hashtag curly boy probs.
Okay.
I think we're working with something. Curly boy problems with a
Mm-hmm.
boy with an I. There's one tweet from somebody on December 24th,
I bet
2012.
they're a dickhead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a dickhead. So let's see if we switch that I out for a Y. Oh, okay, all kinds of content for that one. People
Oh,
are
no
all over
kidding.
that hashtag.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah, yeah, we got to stick to the I.
Maybe we can infiltrate it. Yeah. Oh man. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, man. So what are we? Oh, there's so many things. There's so many things to. Oh, like it's almost too much. Um, I'm a real current event guy today. You know.
You
You
have
want to start
strong
off with
feelings about current events.
Stevie Boy's Black Pill?
Yeah.
Get that one out of the way.
Have our
There's
every
this.
episode session is the first one is Stevie's black pill.
Yeah. So like there was this article talking about how America ranks last in terms of media trust. I don't know if
Okay.
you had seen that kind of going around.
No.
And I just want to remind everybody, it's we don't rank last in media trust. It's just sort of I think it's just like sort of like a other side of a parabola kind of a thing where we're at like this face off point of where we are people still feel like free enough to openly voice their distrust for the media.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But like, so would you say, so does North Korea trust their media like more? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like presumably, people kind of know the deal, but they also sort of know. I would say a 100% I trust the media rating is more indicative of a society that trusts the media less than
Definitely.
whatever our percentage is. I didn't really look into it, but like we could get there. Is the black pill?
It's
Like
kind of
we're
like
not immune from
it's kind of like the
getting there.
wife, the husband that beats his wife all the time goes around and tells everyone
Oh, why
he's
do you
like my
have to
wife.
do this?
He's like my wife loved me. Look, let's ask her. Honey, what do you think? You love me, right?
You
Yeah, I'm the greatest
you
thing ever.
know,
See, look, she
I
she
think
loves me.
this what Matthew's doing right now, whether he knows it or not, is he sees that we have over 700 subscribers a little quicker than expected, and he's just like, nah. He's like, this game ain't over. We're in a game of chicken with 1,000 subscribers or getting punted from YouTube, and damn it, I'm going to talk about woman beating until.
You know where the term rule of thumb comes from, right?
Oh
It
boy,
was
yep.
in and
Here we go. It's a
in
tie-in for all
Britain.
the biblical talk.
and that's kind of like the new in Minecraft. Yeah, a rule of thumb was that there was a rule of thumb that a husband was permitted to beat his wife with anything that was smaller in diameter than his thumb. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not. I'm like always. I mean, like a piece of rebar. Like, does that count? Can I? Anyways, I'll consult my
This
wife
is
and see what she says.
Is this thing on? Is this thing still on? All right. Okay, so there's that.
Blue screen. Bzz.
I want to go. I want to do a thought exercise real quick. With like 2 days ago, if you asked, most like libertarians, what is some? Give me a list of things that John McAfee wouldn't do. You know what I mean? I think the answer for most people would be like, man, that guy will do anything. What are you talking about? So it's to say, all right, you can't think of anything in your wildest dreams that you would put past John McAfee. Like everything's on the table, with this guy, and they'd just be like, yeah, man, he's crazy. He's the best. He's totally out there. He'll do anything. He gives no fucks. This, that, and the third. And then all of a sudden, today, there is just the phrase of like, oh, well, John McAfee. One thing that I know that John McAfee wouldn't do, right, is say that he wasn't going to kill himself and then kill himself, knowing that it would create a whole bunch of distrust for the state and create any kind of like turmoil. That's just totally off the table. You know what I mean? And so I'm not even saying that I know what happened or didn't happen, but it's just so funny to just how quickly that changed. How confident everyone is that, oh yeah, definitely this is something that a very measured and not crazy at all John McAfee would do, and not under any kind of duress whatsoever. That was that's been real fun.
Natural born troll, and there's no
Right!
possible way that he would build everyone up to believing that if he killed himself, it's because the federal government did it, and then go kill himself. He's of all people who would kill himself to sell a joke. John McAfee would be like the top of my list.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely adored the man.
Tattooeth too much. Oh, no doubt. But I think he's someone that libertarians absolutely loved, kind of living vicariously through.
Yeah.
And he had a real appeal where that wild ass lifestyle, kind of with the left libertarians, I think, I don't know if that was enough to hook some of them, but he sort of appealed to both. He's like, yeah, I'm definitely not going to pay my taxes, and taxation is theft and blah, blah, blah. Also, all the crazy shit that he was into.
Did you know that he, I guarantee you wouldn't know this, so I don't know why I framed it that way, but
I won't.
He actually agreed to officiate our wedding. Amy and I,
wow.
I ripped Twitter apart trying to find it. I can't find the tweet, but Amy reached out to, like, we'd been joking about it, and Amy tweeted at him and said, hey, my husband and I are getting married. Would you officiate our wedding? I can't remember exactly how he responded, but he was basically like, yeah, hell yeah, of course I will. And then we were never able to actually work it out. So a good buddy of mine, Nick, ended up being the one who did it. But
Nick McAfee?
No, Nick McAfee, yeah.
No.
So this is going to be a shorter show than usual because I've been doing like talking all day basically. So I had a show this morning. Shout out Gary Collins at The Simple Life. He has had me. This is the third time now I've been on his show. The last two times have been just here in the last couple of weeks. I did it a couple weeks ago and then did a show today. We're talking about woke culture, and our first episode that we did a week and a half or so ago, we went into kind of like what woke culture is, like where it came from, kind of its Christian roots, and kind of we kind of laid out all the problems. And then today, the episode we did, we talked about a lot of the solutions, and also, and we went even deeper into the problems as well, and their psychology, and we did touch on the mystical versus the material, all that sort of stuff. So go check out his podcast. He's a really great guy, Gary Collins. Really appreciate him having me on, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And then we're doing what?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we're doing this show here now, and then at 4:30 today. I'm going to be joining the great Cyprian, formerly known as Ven Armani, on the Liberty Lockdown podcast with Clint. And Clint asked us to come on because we've been kind of the two of the more vocal opponents of this whole idea of the LPMC and using the LPMC to take over the LP and all that. So he had Dave Smith on a week and a half ago. And had Dave make the case for it, and then he asked Cyprian, and it's going to take a while to get used to. He asked Cyprian and I to come on and give the counter, which is going to be very interesting because we both are definitely like think that the LPMC is that the taking over the LP is kind of a joke. It's just a waste of time. But we come at it from pretty different perspectives, and we don't necessarily agree ourselves with each other. So it'll be an interesting conversation from that perspective. What was I going to say? So that show, we're going to be recording at 4:30, but it won't be live. He said he's going to get it posted out tonight. So be on the lookout for that. Go subscribe to Clint. And then before we get into the rest of the conversation here today, let me tell you guys about our good friends, the Abelars. You can, if you don't regularly consume CBD, I'm going to assume that you just are, I don't know, in perfect health or something. I mean, even people that are in perfect health should be consuming CBD regularly. It's a fantastic product. It's a fantastic substance. It's very good for you. Your body has a specific system dedicated to processing cannabis, and it has all kinds of positive effects. So Paloma Verde CBD is the store that's owned by our good friends Carlos and Vanessa Abelar. They're kind enough to subscribe or to sponsor this show. And so it's great if you guys can go use promo code KING for 25% off any order over $75 that you get from them. That gives us they're kind enough to give us a cut of the sale, so that they can support us, and we get to support them. We appreciate you guys supporting them and us in doing that. So go to palomaverdecbd.com, PALOMAVERDECBD.com, and use promo code KING. Get you 25% off. Get yourself some good CBD products. I've got this now empty strawberry lemonade THC free CBD gummies. Fantastic. 300 milligrams per jar. So that's 10 per gummy. They taste fantastic. And ever since I started taking them at night, I've been sleeping way better. I haven't had nearly the lower back pain in the morning that I usually do. And I've been having way more vivid dreams. So I swear by the stuff, and if you're gonna get it, then get it from good people who you can support a family business, and go to palomaverdecbd.com and get yourself some CBD. All right, so now why don't you?
You were talking about the Mises Caucus.
Yes.
And
yes.
again, I know this really comes off as just smashing everyone. It's just that we expect better. We want better. Like if you listen, if you're gonna sort of fancy yourself as the smartest people, in the biz, you can't just show up talking about stuff that we were talking about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and act like it's the answer now. You know what I mean? Because even what I'm getting at is, even when you were talking about getting into, like, that's actually what sort of got us talking, was on Stapleton's show. You ran through sort of the whole philosophical background that was describing the hell that we were living in, or beginning to experience. And that was interesting. But like, that was the beginning of the conversation. It wasn't just identifying the philosophy or the ideas and then just like waging a war against them or whatever. It was the beginning of kind of going down a path in trying to ask questions. And eventually, that path kind of hopefully gets to the idea of the institutions in power that are responsible, for distributing the ideas or amplifying them or what have you. But I just want to read this real quick. This has like the Mises Caucus logo and the whole bit. Somebody put it out, I guess. Critical race theory is the practice of viewing all social and cultural issues through the lens of race. It is a harmful and divisive ideology influenced by Marxism that moves us further away from Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of a nation that focuses on individual character. No, there's more. Not color. Not color. It is important to speak out against this ideology that places group identity above individualism. Quoted by whoever. And so I just want to take a quick moment. I have a little bit that I do where I post certain memes, in a group that are of a particular
a group that doesn't exist.
They have a particular flavor, and so basically some people would call it boomer, and I'm doing it with a sense of irony, yet will unironically get referred to as a boomer for doing it, which is itself ironic, because I believe what distinguishes like a boomer meme, it sort of just doesn't have a level of irony in sophistication and complexity that speaks to maybe a younger mind frame, right? So it's interesting that the people miss the irony of me doing it and will still call me a boomer, right? Be that as it may, my point is, I'm sure that someone who reposted this thing from the Mises Caucus talking about critical race theory 19 years too late, or 190 years too late, or whatever. I'm sure that someone who has reposted this has called me a boomer unironically. Yet I want to go back and point out it is harmful and divisive, blah, blah, blah. It moves us further away from Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of an is trying to get out of being called a racist by invoking Martin Luther King not the most boomer shit that you could do ever? I mean, how many Republicans have you watched die publicly, for trying to do this. Like, you know what I mean? This is the thing. It's just like, if you're going to say, all right, we've got all the answers, you can't think that talking about Martin Luther King, which, by the way, you're already playing into the whole idea of they're playing their game of not wanting to be called a racist in the first place, right? Talking about Martin Luther King,
which when you try not to be called racist, what you're doing is you're saying that there's a legitimate possibility you could be racist, and that it would be legitimate for someone to call you racist.
You're guaranteeing, if you're not, if you're saying anything along the lines of this, and you talk about Martin Luther King, you are 120% going to be called a racist. It's not going to work, It's just, and that's there's kind of so much wrong with this. They're trying to battle the ideology. On what battleground are you trying to battle this ideology? It just the thing that was interesting. I think when we first started the show, we did a lot of philosophy, and it wasn't. I don't think the idea was ever, let's pick up all our battle gear and start fighting this philosophy. The interesting part about the philosophy was when we kind of, what was it, Marcuse, and then that goddamn Guido in the prisons. I'm blanking on his name.
Oh yeah,
him.
Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci.
Right. The whole idea was observing that, oh man, these people really went after particular institutions first, in order to control them. In that all the ideas, that's all way down the line. That it was getting the institution. That was the whole thing that was fascinating about all this, philosophy in the history, and figuring out like where this stuff came from. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, we're gonna fight these ideas in the marketplace of ideas and totally win because we're smart. Like that's not the takeaway, right?
Right.
Am I wrong? It really bothered me. It really grinded my gears.
The biggest thing about it for me was like I was falling asleep while I was listening to it. I was like, this is generic, ordinary claptrap. And like when you're doing that, when you're delivering that message, you're pandering to progressives, because there's no conservative or other libertarian who's going to be like, oh, that's right, you invoked Martin Luther King. Oh, that great conservative hero. Like that's the
guy who's definitely not a communist.
Exactly. I mean, the dude didn't even write his own speeches. The majority of his speeches were written by Stanley Levison. Dude,
anonymous, but a friend. Why is it that most everyone arguing against critical race theory doesn't understand it? And then he says it's a Marxist. He said something about this. He said something about him not writing his own speeches. He made some point here that it was speeches that were written for him by I mean, they point to MLK's appeal to equality and argue against CRT and Marxism as if his speech writers weren't all commies. They don't get it.
Right. You don't get critical race theory without Martin Luther King. It's these are in a natural progression from each other. But the biggest thing here is that leftism is precisely what you exist to combat. That is the enemy. So pandering to them, trying to adopt their speech, trying to adopt their values and explain, this is just the old, we're socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Like we're going to out conservative the conservatives and out liberal the liberals. It's just, like you said at the beginning, we talked a lot about philosophy, and a big part of that was, a big part of it was because it was just what we were interested in at the time. And we'll do it again if we encounter other stuff that we're interested in like that. But for me also, it was like, this will explicitly drive away the type of person that I don't want listening to this show. Because I'm not trying to use this show as an evangelistic tactic. Like my goal with this show, I don't know about you, but my goal with this show is not to try to appeal to most people possible. My goal is to appeal to the right people, to the specific people that I'm looking for. And I want to bring this up probably tonight when I'm talking to Clint and Cyprian, but Dave, I just finished listening to Dave Smith talking to Clint on Liberty Lockdown from a week and a half ago, and first of all, I have to give a shout out to Dave. He reached out to me after the Pete Quinones episode. He just messaged me and said that he was listening to me on there, and that obviously we don't agree on some stuff, but he said I was really making him think, and I actually told him, I said, I have to be honest. I think I've probably been too sharp in my criticism of you in the past, and my intent isn't to be antagonistic to you. I want to make sure that our criticism is remaining constructive, and he was just like totally like, yeah, that's all cool. I completely understand. It's all good, buddy.
Most
So
charismatic guy.
so I got to give him a shout out for that. But so now I'm going to criticize him. So in the
I fucking knew it.
and in this episode with Clint, he said that he has 3 primary goals with this Libertarian Party stuff. He said there's 3 different groups of people he's trying to appeal to. He said to the people who aren't libertarians, he wants to make them libertarians, basically. To the people who are libertarians but aren't part of the Libertarian Party, he wants to convince them the Libertarian Party is the place to be. And to the people who are libertarians and who are in the Libertarian Party, he wants to convince them that the Mises Caucus route is the way to go. I think that's what he said. It doesn't matter exactly what they were. The point to me is that means that you have a message, you have an audience, you're trying to appeal to 3 different audiences with 3 different messages. And you might say, well, they're all the same message because they all have ultimately it's all like the same call to action or something like that. But there's this marketing principle that you don't try to market to everybody. If you try to market to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. You need to market to specific people. You have to niche down. You want to be as niche as possible. And it seems counterintuitive, but it's because when you try to market to everybody, you turn milquetoast. You get watered down. There's no passion, there's no power to your message because it's being directed to everybody. Ultimately, people want an enemy, and they want you to market toward their enemy when they're shopping for political services, which is what election is. So this is the same thing here. It's just watered down milquetoast. It doesn't move the needle, and if anything, I mean, I can't tell. If you'd have read that to me, I would have assumed that was an LP National tweet and not LPMC. So this just, and I mean, it's one tweet. So, whatever, maybe some dickhead got a hold of the account and made a tweet, and, everyone else was like, screw you, it's a stupid tweet. Or so, it is what it is. But this whole thing, it just illustrates to me even more how much of a complete wasted effort all of this is. Like attempting to accomplish this, these people just don't truly appreciate the magnitude of the beast that they're taking on. If they, with the approach that they're taking, it's very clear that this isn't, this is the type of thing that you do when you're in peacetime and you have, all the time in the world, and you're kind of like, hey, you know what? I think we're going to try to, spread this message that you don't have these 2 options. You could have a 3rd option, and yada, yada, yada. And, and Dave is talking to Clinton. He says, I understand that if I get the Libertarian nomination, it's a long shot. It's going to be pretty hard to try to actually be, get elected president. It's not very likely. And I'm like, it's not even that it's not likely. It's that it is an impossibility. It will not happen. It will not. If you think that there's an alternative other than that, then you haven't been paying attention. Number one, the notion that there's going to be any anti-establishment person who's elected, period, or allowed to hold that position is preposterous. It's very evident. There was a shadowy cabal. It's very evident that that's not going to happen. But even beyond that, say you did get some outsider elected as president. Do you know what would very quickly become the least relevant position in the United States government? President. The entire system will move to neuter it. So it's just this whole thing is just completely it completely underestimates the actual gravity of the situation and the extent of which it's like these are the people they're like, the government's the worst thing ever. Get rid of the government. And they look at someone like us and they're like, you're statists. But it's like,
yes,
yes, Chad, yes. It's like, but they're the ones who've blown the government up into this big giant boogeyman, and they still don't fully appreciate how massive and powerful and completely unconquerable the federal government beast is.
Let me know when I can segue off that.
Segue.
Okay. You know, I'm going to do something I usually don't do. I'm going to trash libertarians on Twitter. Okay. Okay. All right. I needed to take a breath here. It seems that the prevailing libertarian take among liberty lovers, as we like to call them, about McAfee is that, and then some more egregiously cringy and awful and self-serving and flowery than others, but McAfee is dead, and the state killed him whether he committed suicide or not. That's sort of the angle that people are taking, and the whole idea is that taxation is wrong, and evil and terrible, and this man didn't want to participate in something evil and terrible, and in so avoiding paying taxes, he is dead because taxation is terrible, and the government, one way or the other, basically is responsible for his death. And I just, the melodrama, I don't know how much I agree or disagree with that. That's not even the point. It's just the melodrama of it is really just a little much sometimes, I gotta say. And it's just a matter of living in like practical reality. If we just kind of run a thought exercise, anything about John McAfee, and I mean, I'm a fan. Sure, he's a very like entertaining person to watch throughout the years, and certainly brave and maybe crazy, like a lot, some combination of those things. Pretty smart guy, I would say. I don't think that's up for an argument. I think that if you said to anybody, if you kind of zoomed back, we're gonna take 100,000-foot look at this. You get this super rich guy who doesn't want to pay taxes and kind of openly bucks the government. The world government, the deep state, the powers that be, whatever you want to call the system, right? And he ended up dead in jail, or he died in jail. I'm not sure who would be surprised by that, but I wouldn't think that you should be surprised by that, just that kind of person wound up dead in jail, right? Whatever happened to him, right? Whatever happened to him, if you can take some poetic license and say, okay, taxation's wrong, John McAfee didn't pay taxes and threatened the deep state and did this and that because they're terrible, and now he's dead, and whether he killed himself or not, it's the fault of the government. You could very easily take a very practical point of view and say, here's a guy who's very smart. Here's a guy who understands how things operate. He understands what taxes are. He understands there's a certain expectation about paying them. He's very familiar with the evils of the state. He chose not to pay taxes. He chose to threaten the deep state. He chose to live like a complete lunatic, and he wound up dead and in jail. You could say that he killed himself, whether he killed himself or not. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point.
Like, for sure. You know what I mean? Like, if your fat uncle in 1986 saw coked up Mike Tyson somewhere, and went up to him and said that, told him that he talked like a girl, right? Did your uncle commit suicide? I mean, in a very literal sense, I'm sure he didn't. But the autopsy is going to say blunt force trauma, blasey, blasey, blasey. But your uncle kind of committed suicide in many ways, right? Like,
it's kind of like what killed him? Was it Mike Tyson? Was it the cocaine, or was it himself? It's kind of like, yes,
yeah. And so just with this. All this talk about the state and the state did this and the state did that and it's the state's fault. I wouldn't even mind all that if there was just some awareness of what you're up against, and maybe incorporating that into like the messaging or the strategy, if there is a strategy, and just I don't know, maybe a tweet once in a while about not, hey guys, you guys are real smart, but just a reminder, don't tweet out about how much you hate the government while showing pictures of your 3D printed arsenal. All right. LPMC, bye. It's just like, let's mix some of that in. You know what I mean? But there seems to be just really playing both sides of just like, the state's terrible. They're so powerful. Yet we're not going to have any awareness of this in how we act.
that's 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 profound. Like that's
Mhm.
the
Thank you.
mashup of the mashup of, on one hand, this is an institution, a network of people that took a relatively powerful, influential person standing against them and effectively tortured him to death, over the course of a year or so. Because like being locked in a cage like that is torture on some level. And then whether they killed him or he killed himself or whatever, either way, that's what they did. This is a completely sociopathic, inhumane, like egregious level of power and corruption. So the answer is we need to take over the LP. Like I don't understand how someone holds those two thoughts at the same time in their head, except if they either wildly overestimate the nature of the LP or wildly underestimate. It's like people don't grasp the like a group that's larger than 150 people, the whole Dunbar's number
Hmm.
thing. And I think that we take that, like, you ever watch a movie and you'll see like there'll be like some action movie, like Jason Bourne or something, and or like 24, where it seems like the world's really really small. Like every single event that happens, it's like the same 20 to 50 people that are all involved in it. The same news anchors, the same publicists, the same president, the same, each it's just a small group of people that every major event in the world all happens with. And I think it's easy for us to imagine, to think of politics as happening that way. Think of the real world as being that way. That at the end of the day, it's this small kind of group of people. And so all we're trying to do is we're trying to shift a little bit of weight over to one side. And, if you're able to get, like, if you get the LP right now gets, what is it, like 3 million votes? I don't remember how many votes they get in an election. You could triple the number of votes that the LP gets. You could 10x the number of votes
Hmm.
the LP gets, and it would still be the smallest political party. You could, these are numbers of people on a scale that your mind can't comprehend. And the level at which all of this stuff is happening and all this stuff is operating, the number of people that are involved in all of these things is just like beyond human comprehension. We can't think of individual people beyond a group of 150 people. So uh, it's also interesting, if you look back in the past, you look at politics happening 100 years ago, 150 years ago. The world was much smaller. It
Hmm.
was much easier for a single person or a single party to amass a level of influence where they could really shift world events. Now the world is so much larger. There's so many people, and there's so much institutional apathy and inertia that you're having to overcome if you're trying to
Hmm.
go the activism way. And then it's just the magnitude of the obstacles ahead of you. I don't understand how someone can look at something like the McAfee thing and then think, well, actually, the best path forward here is we just got to focus on this election cycle, and we got to,
Hmm.
take over this libertarian party, and then we're going to get lots of attention. And it's there's a degree
Yeah.
to which it's like these people think they're living in a movie, and
Yeah.
and
And
it's
I
kind of
don't.
like everything's going to magically come together, like Field of Dreams or something, and everything's going to magically come together, and there's going to be this miracle, and then everyone's going to change their heart, and they're all going to decide, oh yeah, the libertarians had the answers all along. I can't understand where these people are coming from and how they get to where they are.
And I think, I don't think there's anything wrong. So you take someone like McAfee, and for me, I observe that, and I see a guy who, I don't know on the outset or at what point, but I think he was aware that he was going to be a martyr, right? At some point.
It
I mean,
seems sure seemed like it.
he had to have, right? And so there's that mindset, and I would say that if you have that mindset and you're living your life in that manner, that's one thing. But this idea of this idea of I guess when you don't know that you're going to be martyred, I guess there's just something about that, and you should, like, like when the Salon piece dropped about the Mises Caucus, there was like a Pikachu surprise face, you know. So, it's just like there's gonna be more coming,
Right.
like for sure.
Okay, so let me see. What time is it here? I got about 10 more minutes. So let me go into this here. So we'll probably do another episode where we dig into this a little bit more because there's a lot to get into here. But I did a little tweet thread earlier this morning. I was talking about authority, and so yesterday on Wealth, Power, and Influence, we had Michael Malice on, which is always great fun watching Michael and Jason banter back and forth. Speaking of boomers, there's a Jason can be a big boomer sometimes. He's fully aware of it, and Malice just loves like baiting him into situations with that, and then beating him over the head with it. And Jason's a good sport, so he goes along with it, and they kind of start bantering, and they actually had a fairly sharp disagreement on the issues of anarchy and such. And so it was an interesting thing watching them go back and forth.
Jason was right without seeing it. I know Jason was right.
The episode will be posted on Monday, so you can look out for it on the podcatchers or on YouTube. So one thing that a phrase that kind of popped into my head as I was talking with Malice about it, I brought up, the new right and Moldbug and the circulation of the elites and Pareto and all that. We had a little back and forth on that, and a phrase kind of popped into my head as I was trying to explain my position. And it was that given the inevitability of elites and the fact that the common person doesn't want freedom, if you believe in anarchy the way he does, then it seems that there's this natural conclusion to me. If you take all the data in all together, there's a natural conclusion here, which is that anarchy is an ideal end goal, but to be realized, it must be enforced. You must have enforced anarchy. And I guess if you asked me what my ideal political system would be, it would be that. And I fully understand there's the paradox in it, but that's I think that's how you have to be looking at these kinds of things. So libertarians have this allergy to authority, and I think there's something that's psychologically revealing about that they're primarily, they see themselves as our responsibilities to be anti-authoritarian, and I think we'll definitely dig into authoritarianism more in the future, which I think is it's unfortunate that it's become such a boogeyman because authority is natural and inevitable and it's good. To be anti-authoritarian, I think people are like, well, I'm anti-bad authority. It's okay, cool. So I'm anti-bad things too. That's good that we got that out of the way, that we agreed that we're anti-bad things. Now let's talk about let's have an actual conversation. So I put together this little tweet thread here, and I just want to kind of read through it real quick, and then we might come back to it and address it later on. So I said, authority is inevitable. Authority divorced from responsibility is corruption. The problem isn't the authority. The problem is the lack of accountability. Attacking the authority doesn't solve the accountability problem. Creating more authoritative authority does. If you want to hold authority accountable, you need to have other authority that's better authority. That's how you create that accountability for the authority. So anarchists, like they say, well, we don't believe in no rules, we just believe in no rulers. Okay. So leaderless cultures are ephemeral. They have no staying power. If you don't have a leader for your culture, you don't have something to cohere around, to a leader to be a tiebreaker in issues in disputes, and ultimately to be the one dictating the vision for the culture and driving people forward. The culture will just fall apart. It doesn't have anything to cohere. So, cultures. There's a typo here. Cultures instant oats themselves. Cultures instantiate
instant
themselves.
Oats?
Yeah,
no shit.
Said instant oats. Cultures instantiate themselves through their leaders. Inevitably, leaders will emerge. The urge to prevent leaders from emerging is itself an emergent act of leadership. If you want to say, no, there shouldn't be any leaders, what you're doing is you're trying to take a leadership position in asserting your values, and you want everybody else to respect and follow your values. You're asserting yourself as a leader in saying there shouldn't be any leaders. So now I'm deliberately using these words because they'll say, well, we don't mean no leaders, we mean no rulers. Okay, well, here. So I said, the average man does not want freedom, he wants security. He'll bequeath his freedom to a leader who promises him security. Thus, leadership becomes rulership. If leadership is inevitable, rulership is inevitable. A call for no rulers is ultimately a call for the dissolution of one's culture. Humans will not organize themselves without rulers. A call for no rulers is an implicit attempt to rule while rejecting the responsibility associated with ruling. If you're going to call for no rulers, what you want your ideology to rule, but you don't want to be the person doing it. You don't want to be the person who's held to account for the ideology if it fails. You want everybody else to play by your rules, but you don't want to be the person who's living them and dealing with the consequences of those rules. So again, a call for no rulers is an implicit attempt to rule while rejecting the responsibility that's associated with ruling. And a guy here, so he replied, he said, I do agree with you about the need for leadership and that a great many of individuals are sheep and they don't need it, but it should be compartmentalized. Okay, so same old argument. I said, this is precisely what I'm talking about. You're creating the exact problem you're attempting to solve. By compartmentalizing or limiting the leadership, you're creating the appearance of accountable leadership while removing the effect of it. As soon as you've compartmentalized, as soon as you've limited it, as soon as you've created these limits to try to constrain it and keep it from growing or for doing other things, you've now divorced the authority and responsibility dynamic from each other. And this is easily recognized. And let me continue. So, by definition, the effect of the limitation will be dictated by those targeted by the limitation. The leaders, by definition, are the ones who dictate the enforcement of the rules. The leaders are the ones who do that. That's what it means to be the leader. So, for example, regulating businesses creates barriers to entry. Regulations become tools whereby those at the top insulate their position from those at the bottom. Same thing with leadership. Anarchy is, in effect, the attempt to communize leadership. Let me say that one more time. Anarchy is, in effect, the attempt to communize leadership. Anarchists want to take leadership and make it a public good, so that it isn't restricted to a few people. It needs to be spread out among everyone. You have to decentralize it. You have to make it. You're basically like making it a utility kind of. So then I did the 2-button meme. So you've got the guy who's sitting here like wiping away the sweat, like, oh, tries to choose between these two options. And the two options are, on one side, regulations are wrong. They create regulatory capture, incentivize rent seeking, and result in state enforced monopolies on the good being regulated, making it so only the politically connected can afford it. It's the standard libertarian Austrian argument against regulations. Basically, the regulations are they create barriers to entry. You know this in minimum wage. If you create a minimum wage, you're basically just outlawing jobs that for people who aren't qualified for the minimum wage. This is very easy to understand. Libertarians understand that regulating something creates regulatory capture, it incentivizes rent seeking, and it will result in state enforced monopolies on whatever is being regulated. So then only the politically connected will be able to afford that thing. But then the other button is political power must be regulated, leaving it unchecked is too dangerous. So the libertarian position is regulations cause negative effects that benefit the politically connected the most. Also, you need to regulate power. It needs to be restricted and limited and compartmentalized. This is an incoherent position. And this is where libertarians, and again, anarchists is effectively, I think I quote tweeted this and I said, libertarians are just wishy-washy anarchists. Libertarians, anarchists, you're dealing with the same thing here. They're not applying their own logic to themselves. If you apply their own logic to themselves, to their own message, the whole thing is incoherent. So the power is a commodity just like anything else. And if you treat it differently, if you create special carve-outs for it, you're going to get the exact same effects that you do when you create special carve-outs with anyone else. The paradox with power is that attempting to limit it creates more of it. And that new power that's created by the attempts to limit it is unearned. It's unaccountable, therefore it's corruption. Now this is I don't have necessarily an answer to this. This is a problem. This is something that needs a solution. There has to be an engineered solution because I'm not comfortable with people just having untrammeled power. Like there's no, There has to be some sort of a natural consequence that constrains their behavior. I don't know how to do that without encountering this exact problem here. This is an engineering problem. This is the exact problem that our goal is to get people to think about this, to start trying to solve this problem. And so we've got, I got to get us wrapped up here, but there's going to be some fun stuff coming down the pike here. We've got some interesting people that we're putting together some projects to work on. To explore this post-libertarian question.
Yeah, and if you want to, I was just going to mention, it's a very important. It's the most, I would say, in all of podcast and perhaps human history, the most important sentence or two ever put together. It's about at the 4-minute and 30-second mark of the Pete Quinones podcast with Adam Patrick, and he starts talking about bringing some really smart people together, and I think everyone should probably listen to that,
definitely,
and absorb that information. Listen to it as many times as you need to.
Hit that like 15 seconds back one and listen to it, and 15 seconds
over
back,
and over and over again.
Yeah,
I made it a ringtone actually, which you can get on our supporting listeners group.
And if you can get that in your head, you'll have it in a nutshell. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. Sorry that this one's a little shorter than usual. Hopefully we made up for it by having a very high concentration of quality content if we didn't have as much of a quantity. So again, we'll be back on Monday. Again, we should be, I hope. See what else comes up. And then remember, be on the lookout for my conversation with Cyprian, with Cyprian / Vinarmani, and Clint from Liberty Lockdown. It'll be on Liberty Lockdown coming out tonight. And then also check out The Simple Life. Had a great conversation. I've had 2 recent really good conversations with Gary Collins. The last one was 10 days ago or so, and then the most recent one was he'll have it out here within the next day or so, I think. So what's up, Clockwork? He's a little someone showed up late. That's too bad. Well, at least you have something to go back to and listen to. It was good talking with you guys. We will see you on the flip side or something like that.